Aloha and good day. This is Clint Hansen with Maui Luxury Real Estate. You're tuned in to the KAOI radio group, 1110 AM, 97.6 FM, 98.7 FM, and 95.5 on the west side. We're listening to Maui Real Estate Radio. You can listen to this and all podcasts on mauirealestateradio.com. Today we have our co-host, Paul. Oh my gosh. It's been an early morning, I'll tell you. It's kids are off of school, and Byron Yap with Axia Home Loans. Now I have to remember his NMLS number, which is 620092. All right.
Got 860092.
0092. My goodness, I'll have to write that down. And we also have Bevanne of Executive Director of Maui Mediation Services. Thank you so much for coming on today.
It's been a pleasure, or it will be a pleasure. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for inviting me.
So you actually have a history of radio. You've been on the famed tubes through the microwaves of the earth and talking to people. What shows were you doing?
Well, I tell you this, I started in radio when I was in high school. I was actually the youngest announcer in my hometown of St. Louis when I started, and did it throughout college. Got my degree in journalism, did it. Became a news director for a station in New Haven, then went on to be just on-air jock for several stations, became a music director in Memphis, program director, music director, and still do voice work and am on an internet radio station right now.
Oh, wow.
So I've been doing this for a bit.
How did you make your way into the mediation services? Just have a calming voice, is that it?
No, not exactly. Radio was changing, and I thought, okay, well, what can I do that'll keep me in the industry? And I thought law, and there happened to be a part-time law program at the University of Memphis, and I was in Memphis at the time, and I studied for the LSAT, got accepted, completed law school while working full-time, and then found out that people needed all types of law, not just entertainment law. But while I was in law school, I was introduced to mediation as an alternative to going to court. And many of us take the class and we're like, okay, yeah, blah, 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 but I'm still gonna go fight the good fight and be a zealous advocate for my clients. And when I moved here, I was looking to establish my practice. I'd been in Tennessee practicing for 10 years. And looking for different ways to build up my practice, I found out about CASA, court-appointed special advocates. And that was a area of comfort in my practice in Tennessee. And while I was taking the class, I happened to work with a social worker who later became the executive director here at Maui Mediation Services. And I really valued the effectiveness of mediation because most people, when they go to court, they don't end up satisfied, even if they are the quote unquote winner. They don't get what they think they deserved or weren't fully heard. Mediation takes care of all that. It's a totally different process. The version that we practice is called facilitative, where it's sitting down, talking story. And with most conflicts, the parties really haven't heard one another, or they feel that their side wasn't really heard by the other side. We break down those barriers, and our mediators guide the conversation. We don't tell you what to do in our form of mediation, but we help bring out the information that maybe you weren't aware of. And sometimes people just need to hear their own side out loud to say, maybe that's not what I mean, or maybe that's not landing correctly, and that's why I'm getting the response that I'm getting. So that's how I wove my way into mediation. I became a volunteer here. Shortly afterward, my predecessor relocated to the continent, and he said, I know this is not on your radar, but I think you'd really enjoy it. And that was 6 years ago.
You loving every day of it?
Every single day. Every day is different, but the most important thing is seeing, very interesting, and every person brings their own personality, but seeing the effectiveness of what we do, especially with the people who say, that's never gonna work, and okay, I'll just do it because court told me I need to come here. Then they walk out and leave us with evaluations that say, why did I waste my time going to court when we could have done this? And it's a healthier relationship going out of the door.
And that's one of the things actually a lot of people don't realize with real estate. If something goes wrong, you first go to mediation and then binding arbitration. And, in the 20 years I've been selling real estate, I've actually never ever had to go to mediation. We've had some, initial conversations and stuff going back and forth between brokers, but never have gotten to that next step. And I'm of course really glad, because you never want to get to that point in the process. You want to have clear communication well in advance and have, good documentation, which helps avoid legal processes. But that being said, tell me more about this and some of the cases that you're seeing these days. I know a lot of people with the eviction process is going to need your services.
Well, we were actually built into the process according to the state law that was passed, the temporary law that's going to be in effect until the end of June next year. So if a landlord has a tenant that owes back rent before proceeding with eviction type stuff in court, they must provide a notice to their tenant and at the same time provide a notice to the community mediation center in their county. There are 5 of us across the state. Our office covers all of Maui County, including Lanai and Molokai. We have a sister agency on Oahu. There are 2 on Big Island and then 1 in Kauai. So collectively, we're the mediation centers of Hawaii, and we all operate very similarly. However, the contracts regarding these landlord-tenant eviction prevention programs are all different according to our counties. So if you have a tenant that is behind in rent, contacting them, contacting us, then we reach out to the tenant to say, listen, you've got an opportunity to mediate. And people are like, well, why would I want to do that? Let me just hide or let me get out of here. How about having your story heard? How about that landlord who might not know that you've been looking for a job or you've got something, but it's not quite what you used to have, which is why they haven't received their payment. Or for the landlords, telling the tenant, listen, is there something we can do? Can we work out? Have you applied for any of the assistance that's out there? And there are
a lot of assistance.
There's a multitude of programs that all have different requirements, but in reaching out to these different agencies, I'm finding out that, like our agency, we're not getting the interest or the inquiries that we've prepared for and that we expect. And this money is sitting there, and some of it is not just for past rent, but it's for future rent. So there are all types of opportunities that people might not be aware of. What we've done is we have blasted just about everything that we know for landlords and for tenants on our website. And the website is mauimediation.org.
All right, remember that, mauimediation.org.
That's it. I'm going to give it to you more times than probably during the course of this. But we've got tabs for landlords and for tenants, and then additional resources. So if you want to find out what's out there, and we've got their direct link, so it's no longer, okay, let me Google it and find out. We're giving you the information. We've made contact with all of these sources, and they want to hear from you. So collectively, collaboratively, these social agencies are trying to help residents in need and trying to educate them as to what's going on.
Now, I've heard many different things about this COVID quarantine or these rules. Bevanne, can you break it down for a layman? Like, what are we working on? Like, if I'm a tenant and I'm having a dispute with my landlord, do I go to court? What is my first step?
Well, you said if you're a tenant, we invite both tenants and landlords to reach out to us first. Why? Well, you're going to get a live person really quickly to answer the questions that we are qualified to, but if we're not, direct you to resources. Again, and I think we have one of the best circuits, if not the best circuit in the state legally. And the courthouse is wonderful, and there are resources there as well. But instead of taking that step where often you're going to have to pay to get it started just in filing fees, why not reach out, have someone from our office call the other party and say, hey, Clint would like to invite you to mediation. Let me tell you what that's about. It is
Mhm.
totally different from court. It's an opportunity to sit down, talk story, find out what's going on in a non-confrontational manner. And by explaining the differences between mediation and what they'll experience in court, a lot of times people are naturally curious and say, well, tell me more, especially if they're not the ones having to call the other party and say, hey, you want to go mediate? We will do that for them. We will call the other party and answer any questions they might have and try to explain why we think this is just a wonderful process.
Now, a concern would be, hey, what is it going to cost? Is it going to
Yeah.
cost me a lot of money to make that call? You know, but I'm nervous. I don't really have much.
Understandable. With the Landlord Tenant Act 57 is the statute. All mediations that fall under this act are completely free to both parties. So
Wow.
that's a win right there. Sometimes cases that go to court are actually free for the tenants. There's another contract that the mediation centers have thanks to the judiciary. So those are for residential landlord tenant disputes that actually do get to district court here. But oftentimes money is not even to be a consideration for the mediation centers. We're
Nice.
here to offer the service and to help inform, residents who pretty much are already in a space of being frantic, upset, worried because of what
Mhm.
they don't know. We want to help calm them down and give them what they need to make informed decisions.
So do you, like, if I came to you, let's just say for argument's sakes, as a tenant, maybe, you guys also say, hey, check this agency out, maybe for landlord assistance, you know what I mean? Because it's
We refer
overwhelming.
everyone. We and try to break it down. That's why on our website, we tried to make it as simple as possible. Not everything in some long list. We've got icons just to click on with their contact information and an overview of what they do. But oftentimes, our staff here, when a person asks, what do we do? They can say, listen, go to the website, check out this agency, check out that agency. We try to make it as accessible and understandable as possible. And sometimes the conversations are longer than others because if I'm frantic and upset, am I really listening to you, Byron, when you're telling me something, or do I need you to maybe say it to me again another time? So we are trained to listen and to reassure.
Wow. That sounds like you would be a great realtor.
I know many have many friends, and no, I'll let you guys handle that heavy lifting.
That being said, I mean, the services that you have been providing, is that something that's usually done over Zoom these days with everything that's going on?
Great question. Our agency has been around since 1982, and normally it would be face to face, but with COVID, part of the things that we've done is really made a shift to virtual mediations. The majority of them are on Zoom. We do tech checks with parties who are like, wait a minute, I've never done Zoom before. What do I do? Again, to make it as easy as possible. So just about all of them now, with a very few exceptions, take place on the virtual platform. And if people don't have the equipment, we ask them, well, do you have friends? A lot of times they can do it on their cell phones.
Mhm.
Everybody just about has one of those now. In some cases, we've even had them come to our offices. That has to be pre-approved. And of course, we've got very strict COVID guidelines for disinfecting. But most of the time, we try to eliminate all barriers for anybody accessing our services.
Now,
Okay.
if let's just say I have a dispute and we have an agreement with the landlord, is there something that goes into writing after that, or is it just, hey, a handshake? How does that work?
Agreements we codify in writing, so everybody has a copy, and it's for the protection of both parties. Okay, this is what we agreed to, and even in the mediation, our mediators don't dictate what the agreement is. We empower the parties. So what's on the paper is what both of them agree to, and then they both sign it. And it's as enforceable as any other written document where both people have signed contracts. So that's
Yeah.
the next question. Well, can I walk away? Well, you can, but if they take it to court, you know what's going to happen? You'll find out.
Yeah. And it's a lot cheaper to go through a mediation process as opposed to going to court, having to deal with lawyers, and of course, the potential judgment to be completely one-sided.
But Clint, not just effective economically. What about time? The
Yeah.
amount of time that you have to take going back and forth for hearings, and most things are not resolved on the initial appearance. And what about energy? What about mental energy? The frustration of dealing with it, the anxiety. Mediation tries to remove most of that, and we do a pretty good job of it.
Mhm, mhm. Wow. I mean, I would imagine nowadays this is just, you're probably pretty busy with the amount of evictions that are going on since the moratorium is up. I mean, have you seen a big inflow in the number of cases?
We have seen an increase in these cases, but nowhere near what we were preparing for.
Oh, that's good.
There were deadlines that were set. Of course, we have the state moratorium that ended, and then the CDC moratorium. And some residents right now may mistakenly still think that they've got until October 3rd before anything has to happen. That is not the case. The CDC moratorium was struck down by the US Supreme Court. So right now it's about landlords. If you have a tenant that you're having an issue with, or tenants, if you have a landlord that you know you owe monies to, come to us. Now is the time. Don't put it off for whatever reason. There are resources out there, and we want to help you. We want to help you traverse that landscape and find out what fits for you.
What is the difference between mediation and arbitration?
Mediation, first of all, is voluntary. You can't be forced into it. Even cases that are referred from court. If a party's like, no, I want my day in court, we want you to have your day in court. It's completely confidential. We cannot divulge anything that happens in our mediation sessions.
I'm disappointed. I
there's an
came
agreement.
here for gossip. I don't know
You
about
know,
you guys,
well,
but
that's
can't
the
you
beauty of it.
anonymize some stuff?
That goes against the beauty and the effectiveness of what we do. Because Clint, if you and Byron are having a beef and things get out in mediation, do you really want, if it's against you, for that to pop up again in court or on social media or in the neighborhood? So we're protecting the sanctity of our process by telling people what's said here stays here. We're the Vegas of dispute resolution.
That's
Based
great.
on your experience, has it been, based on the current cases or the past cases, how has it worked out with people? Have you guys seen a lot of like agreements happen, or it's been like, hey, forget it, we're going to go to court? Have you seen?
Every case is different, but there are many where for the first time they're hearing one another. And a lot of times the landlord doesn't want to get rid of, especially if it's a good tenant, somebody you've worked with for years, the family. You get rid of what you know. Do you know what's coming in next? Will it be better? Will it be worse? So there have been many cases where, no, not only do we come to an agreement, but most importantly, since it's their agreement, they want to abide by it because they're the ones that developed it. It's what they've agreed to. And in most cases, if you've got an agreement that you've come up with, you're going to stick to it versus an order where I don't want to do that anyway. Well, catch me if you can.
Yeah.
That again defeats the purpose.
So what about after the mediation? I mean, I'm assuming that given that it's not an order and that it's more of an agreement process, it's, can be a bit more egalitarian, and that's great to hear that it's free. But what happens if things change after the process? Do you see people a second time, or do they have to take another step? Like, perhaps they have a job that they're going to be starting next month. And this is probably happening to quite a few people in the hotel industry right now, and then having to get laid off of work so that that new job that they were about to start is not available to pay. So do they come back a second time, or is there, does it automatically go to arbitration after mediation?
No, we don't have any automatic trigger for arbitration, and we invite parties, if something changes after the agreement, to come back to us. Oftentimes in the agreements that we draft, it does say, should something change or if there's a future dispute, they agree to come back to us because they've already experienced the process. And we don't enforce. So that's why during the mediation, we try to look forward to any possible hurdles that need to be discussed and included.
Okay.
Because it's not really effective if the agreement can't hold up just because things weren't considered during the process. So all of that, if there are contingencies, well, how do we address if this happens or if that happens? We try to bring all of that up in the session.
I've got a question. Why did you pick Maui? I always ask people that.
I had been coming here to visit friends, relationship, and after going back and forth across the ocean, it was time to come. I had been practicing in Tennessee for 10 years, and although the allure of doing another bar exam did not excite me, I really felt drawn to this community and to what I'm doing.
It is Maui. Come on, you got to sell
Indeed.
it.
So with it is, do you only handle real estate? I mean, other disputes mediation?
We handle just about anything. Our top 3 dispute categories are domestic issues, families, custody. We're getting a lot more divorces now. Landlord-tenant was always second, and consumer merchant disputes. Credit card, bills, those are our top 3. But if there are 2 people in conflict, we've probably heard it, everything. Personal injury, employer, employee, anything, neighbor, family. We handle it all.
So it's still in that order, even with the eviction moratorium, or are you seeing just an increase across the board with COVID, like the family court and things of that nature?
It's
Are
still
you
in that
seeing-
order, but
Yeah.
we are receiving more. It
Yeah.
just seems like right now people are so in conflict and just want to have their way that we're seeing more and more cases, self-referrals, definitely from the courts, and more people are hearing about us and saying, listen, let me see if this will work. And that's great news for us because we've been a best kept secret here for so long, but we are embracing the new attention and trying to help as many people as we can.
So the courts, when someone files, let's say something, they may refer mediation. They may say, hey, go talk to them, you know.
There
How do the
are a
courts-
couple of categories that specifically we have a contract. So many small claims cases, they will refer to us if they think it's appropriate. Many district court cases, again, the landlord tenants especially, they will refer to us. Many of the family court cases where they need parenting plans, many are referred to us. So the courts and the judges have become pretty comfortable and confident about our abilities and giving the parties way more time than they would even be able to have in a court setting.
Yeah, there's a really limited resource out there with the number of judges that are available, the number of lawyers, of course, the costs associated with that. So I would imagine it's a really essential service that you guys provide.
We think so. And our services are provided by mostly volunteers. That's the beauty of it. So these are fellow Mauians who want to help their neighbors get over. Now, they're all specially trained. All of our mediators have gone through at least 32 hours of intense professional training and then an apprenticeship. But it's been working, and we do evaluations at the end of our sessions consistently. More than 90% of the participants report that they're satisfied with the process. I don't think you're going to find that with people coming out of courthouses.
No, definitely not. Because just like you said, it's more of a process as opposed to finding out some sort of, guilt or anything. It's an egalitarian system, right?
We want everyone to be able to communicate in a supportive, respectful environment and to be heard. And often it's happening in mediation for the very first time.
That's wonderful.
Now, what about like a working family? Do you offer the Zoom things after hours? You know what I'm saying? The meetings, like,
Because we are reliant on volunteers. If we have volunteers who are willing to do it, we have done weekends, depending on the availability of the mediators. We have done evenings. Right now, we are generally keeping it in between normal work hours, but we are working on increasing our pool even more to offer those weekend sessions.
What's the size of your group? How many people are there that help in those processes? And how many cases do you typically see in a week?
On average, well, I can give you annual. And
Okay, cool.
Because of COVID, with COVID, everything is changed. But annually, we serve at least 500 cases a year.
Okay.
And our mediator pool generally fluctuates because, again, it's on availability. And then we do have some snowbirds that come, and while they're here, they mediate. So I'd say it fluctuates between 20 and 40 at any given time.
Okay. Yeah, do you ever see yourself doing any mediation services for associations? Because be selling real estate. Oftentimes there's individual owners in a particular group that are not happy with something that's going on, and they tend to like write a case. And then if that happens, sometimes that could make getting a loan difficult in a particular area, depending on the size and scope and, of the case. Obviously, this would be a lot better and preferable to that just because of the speed and process of it. I mean, have you done that? And I don't know how that would work considering,
We
directors
handle
and all that.
many AOAO cases. We actually have a
Oh.
contract with the Real Estate Commission. So if it meets the criteria of bylaws, declarations, or I believe common areas, there are three criteria, any of those, then they can come to us. And once again, there's no cost to mediation. There's actually a statute that requires in some situations the AOAOs to come if the tenant wants it to mediation. Now they get to elect if it's our style of facilitative or another style, which is more evaluative, where the mediator tells them, okay, I think this is what a judge would do. But yes, we handle those cases routinely as well.
Evaluative. Tell me a little bit more about that process.
Evaluative is where you're depending upon the mediator to share their assessment of your argument for both sides. Our mediators do not do that. And I have a number of mediators who are indeed attorneys. They do not have that legal hat on when they're mediating for us, because in the facilitative view, that's kind of putting a finger on the scale. If Byron comes in and I say, Byron, I think your argument's better, then Byron's going to be, well, I'm going to win this and I'm not going to try to hear anything else. And Clint, you might be, well, wait a minute, you were on his side all along. So we don't deal with that in the facilitative model.
Okay. So for facilitative model, there's another services that are available, or is that something that you guys provide on a different hat or?
All we do is facilitative. That's all we do.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Interesting.
I've been, like I said, fortunate enough, never have to be a part of that process, but it sounds wonderful. It's a lot more, a meeting.
We actually had a training not too long ago that was conducted at the RAM offices and had a number of realtors take it. And again, at the end of the training, all of the participants have had their eyes opened in some way, because we really go over communication in a different manner. And they report back, I'm talking to my family differently. I'm hearing disputes in the parking lot differently at work. It really is a phenomenal training. And a lot of people take our training just to get the skill set, not necessarily to mediate. But we will be having another training for mediators. We're planning one coming up in November. And information will always be posted on our website or just call our offices. Now, one more thing, we have two distinct lines. For our landlord-tenant disputes, the dedicated phone number is 344-4255. That's landlords, that's tenants, that's anyone that has a question, 344-4255. And of course, the website at mauimediation.org. Any other disputes? Our office is 244-5744.
Do you do, like, let's say it's commercial, like about a commercial dispute with my landlord or a commercial thing, you also do that too, or is it?
We've done that as well. There's not much that we won't take on except criminal matters, matters where there might be a question of safety to the parties. We will not touch those. But if you're in dispute, in distress, want to see what the other side is saying and want to go a non-litigious route, call us. We probably can help, and oftentimes do.
But I'm presuming that if I have a dispute with my wife, like we're in disagreement, I'm not going to call you unless it's the last thing, right?
No, we handle family disputes and domestics as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not therapists, but again, a dispute where you want to be heard, sure.
I'm sure you have a long list of therapists you can recommend, though.
We have some mediating for us, but yeah.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
It's really a wonderful process, you know, and every time that I get the opportunity to share like what we do, it's my privilege and my pleasure to do that.
Yeah, because the natural fear is, you know, when you hear mediation, you hear law, you know, we panic, right? You know, we kind of tighten up,
Exactly.
you know.
So for those people who are going through the eviction process and mediation as a solution, I mean, do you introduce them to some of the funding that's available and be like, you guys both probably are not aware, but you can, you know, go to this particular area to apply for funding? Do you make those kinds of connections as well?
We try to do that before they even come in our offices with both of them individually. You know, are you aware of, please go to our website, go specifically to landlord here. You'll find a multitude of agencies that want to help. So they come into the mediation prepared, you know. It's not fair to try to come up with an agreement if you don't know everything that you need to know. So we want them to have as much information before they come into our session as possible so they can speak knowledgeably and comfortably.
So there's a lot of resources available by your website other than just connecting to a mediation service.
Definitely.
If anybody has a question about some, you know, potential funding that would be available to help them in their time of need, that they could just go to that website.
Definitely. We send them to the source.
What would you recommend them calling the 344-4255 if they didn't have a, you know, smartphone or a computer, or what would you say?
Yes, we are here to help. So definitely, if they can't find it, we'll give you the number.
Okay, excellent. You know, one of the questions I've always had about mediation versus binding arbitration. Now, I've done neither, you know, because like I said, it's a process of going through and actually being prepared to prevent a suit from ever happening. So as a broker, my job is to make sure that all my agents go through, they prepare, disclose, and communicate as well as possible and prevent any of those things from ever happening. What is the difference? I mean, you've quite explained, you know, the mediation. Now, arbitration, is that much more of a legal process?
It's having a private judge, because binding means, okay, that's it. Whatever this person decides is what we have to deal with. So it's much closer to the legal process. Mediation, you come to an agreement, you don't like it. It's not that you're stuck with it. There are other options. But honestly, in my 6 years being the executive director here, I can't say one case where an agreement was set aside or one of the parties said, never mind, I'm just going to go to court. Because if you've had the opportunity and the other party has had the opportunity to really discuss what's going on, most of the time, you know, it's not worth it, whatever the it is. Is it your time? Is it your money? And there was a judge here that I heard speak, and he said, really, if you're going to court and less than $100,000 is at stake, you're going to lose more than you're going to gain.
The legal fees are far, far worse than
the
that.
fees, the time off work, the getting the babysitter, all of it. I mean, it's measurable.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you end up putting things into perspective and you go through, it's usually better to negotiate. And I have had some times where, you know, people have gotten up to the wire and, you know, deposits are subject at this point and putting in additional terms like irrevocably non-refundable and whatnot, but they still are like, no, like you know, and it's better to have a negotiation as opposed to going to the court, because you know, if you do, then those legal fees become part of the judgment process, and those will oftentimes way outstrip any of the costs associated with just making the settlement, because it is not cheap to go to court at all.
And sometimes the legal remedy, whatever that is, still won't leave the quote unquote winner satisfied. So sometimes legal won't address the totality of the problem. And you might say, well, you have to pay this within a certain amount of time because that's what the law says. But if the parties agree to something outside of what the law says, then it works for them. But if you're in court and they can only rule according to what the law dictates, you've lost that creativity.
Now, I got a question. Say I go through mediation and we come up with a helpful situation. You guys help us out, and then that falls apart. Am I able to does mediation become part of like all the stuff that happened in mediation? Can that be used against me in court if I have to go to court, or? Is that
What
a
is-
separate?
What's said in mediation is confidential, and courts by statute will not consider. And we have actually had some cases where something was said in a mediation and then a party wanted to use the information they gained in a court proceeding. Thank goodness by law that is not allowed. If
That's
it's
good.
an agreement, then it's something that is signed publicly. The courts may indeed entertain it. But if it's something that's revealed, you can't use it for what's called hidden discovery. Where I'm
Oh.
going to mediate just to find out what you got, and then I'm going to run to the
Mhm.
court. That would defeat the whole purpose.
Nice.
That's great to know. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
So if it goes onto the contract and the agreement at that point, then it becomes, subject to the court and the agreement, because that would be in play. That makes total sense. And then, anything that you wanted to, help understand the scope of the situation can't be used against you later on in order to, come to a resolution.
That just keeps it fair, Clint. It keeps it
Mhm.
an even playing field.
I love it. Man, now
We
I
do
want to
too.
go. I want to get in trouble now and use your services. It sounds beautiful.
No, how about just sign up for our next training, and then you can
Okay,
be
all
a
right,
part
deal,
of it.
deal.
How does that work with the next training? If I signed up, do I get in a rotation as a mediator? How can someone do that as a voluntary thing?
After the training and after the apprentice period, because after the training, we don't just stick you in. You have to observe what people are doing, because this is a true service and people are coming to us with real life problems. So our mediators have to be confident and competent in what they are doing. But for those that are truly committed to doing it, after the apprentice period, you're paired with an experienced mediator to walk you through it, make sure you're comfortable, and then eventually you handle it on your own. I am proud to say that we still have one of our first trainees who's been mediating with us for more than 30 years, and she's actually in our office right now.
Oh, wow. So this is completely different, but for mediation services, sometimes people are suing the county or, having an issue with a judgment or a fine or something like that. I'm assuming that mediation services are not available for something like that, like issuing, sometimes a water meter gets put in place and then the services gets passed up, or people apply for a vacation rental license or have a vacation rental license, and then the time period for renewal passes by because they don't send any notifications. I'm assuming that between the county, there's very specific legal guidelines and mediation's not available.
I can't speak to what the county requires, but what I can say is we have done mediations for different employees that work for the county.
Oh, yeah.
Again, both
employment
must
services.
agree. Both parties must agree to mediate. If it's not appropriate, then in our intake process, that usually comes up and we will say, I'm sorry, but we don't think we're the best agency to help you meet this need. But generally, if both parties want to come together, we can accommodate them.
Now, is that Robert's rules that you go through, or is it just more of a discussion process? I mean, how do you mediate? Like, do you have people just like we do on Zoom and you hear both sides of the story? Is it?
There is a whole model that we follow. We generally bring the parties together very briefly so they can state what it is they want to resolve.
Okay.
And then we separate them so they get to fully explain. And our mediators go back and forth with the parties, investigating, questioning, giving them assignments. How about thinking about it this way, or what if this were to happen? And there is a lot of moving parts going on. And then most of the time they've got more in common than they even realize. And that's when we're able to bring them back together and hammer out the agreement that works for both of them.
Oh, wow. So
How is you want to go, Clint?
yeah, I have a real, more specific to the mechanics associated with it. So if there's mediation, let's just say it's between two individuals, landlord and tenant, and then are they going in and it's just three people there? There's three mediators in place. There's one mediator, so that not like a judge, or is it? I would assume it's two mediators, one talking and communicating with their prospective party, and then going back and reaching. Like, how does the mechanics work?
It depends on the case type. Generally,
Okay.
for our domestics, we have two mediators. They don't represent sides. They work as one, so they travel together. But
Okay.
for a lot of our landlord tenants, we do have one mediator who does the session, who facilitates the dialogue.
So, in other words, if you're in the situation where it's a family court and, well, technically not family court, but a family mediation, you would like leave one person as you're talking to them. The two would be together, talking to one side, and then they would go together in order to come to a mutual understanding.
Most of the times, but our mediators are
Okay.
given great flexibility. And again, every situation is unique. Everybody is unique. Sometimes I've seen our mediators bring them together sooner than I might have, because as the mediator, we bring ourselves to the process too.
Mhm.
So what we think will work, our gauge of the parties, and we do what we think is most effective. Some we keep apart the entire time, still come up with an agreement. So really, it depends on the case. I can't say there's a cookie cutter way that we're going to handle that, nor would I ever say that.
No doubt. Everything is definitely a special case,
Definitely.
especially in, family court. And you were saying that you've seen an increase in cases, just, everybody's in conflict these days and arguing and disagreements of whether it's about vaccinations or,
Or just being in the
shutting
home
down.
together,
And
when you're
they're
cooped up
yeah.
with the kids, and we are just now kind of coming out, frustration rises. And unfortunately, many of us don't know what to do with that frustration. So
Mhm.
this is indeed an outlet.
Oh, thank you so
Nice.
much.
Unreal. Great. So so going back to it, just kind of resurfacing our whole conversation is basically the first step is go to your website, check what's on there. Then if, follow those links or resources, then basically if something's not on there, make the next step, pick up the phone, call. Is that what you'd recommend?
That would be what I recommend, but we are here. So definitely, you're sitting there right now listening to this. Go to the website, explore. There's so many things there, and further questions, don't hesitate. Give us a call.
You have a very soothing voice, I have to say. Can you read a story? This is wonderful.
Sure, give me some studio time. I'll take care of it.
Well, I think to wrap it up, give us your website, give us anything we can share with the community.
Sure. Website is mauimediation.org. The email for landlord-tenant disputes is landlord-tenant-help@mauimediation.org. The landlord-tenant phone number is 344-4255, and our office is 244-5744.
Clint, you're going to replace me with her next week, aren't you?
I'm sorry. She's getting an email right after this. New co-host. No.
Thank you, gentlemen, for giving me the time. I really
thank you. We appreciate it.
And Byron Yap, thank you so much for co-hosting this show. I really appreciate all your help in setting this up. This is really an essential service to provide to the people of Maui, and it's becoming more and more of a need. So, thank you, Bevanne, of the Executive Director of Maui Mediation Services, and Byron Yap of Axia Home Loans. Thank you so much. And that's MNLS 860092. I got it right. Yes.
There you did. But you didn't get her name right. Remember that next time.
Yeah, Bevanne.
Thank you very much,
Tell
Bevanne.
me, how do you say it, Bevanne?
You got it, Bevanne.
Bevanne. Okay,
Thank
cool.
you.
I prefer the French accent. That's
Well,
so
I
much
see.
better.
You like that little Frenchy thing.
Bevanne.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. We
Aloha.
appreciate it. Aloha.
Aloha.
Bevanne, if you ever have anything that you want to discuss or anything, we're done now recording. Feel free to email me.